Hello everyone, and welcome back to a new episode. I know many of you use these videos to help you sleep, so before we begin, I thought it would be fun for everyone to say hello and leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from. Your engagement really makes this channel special. And hey, if you enjoy getting your nightly dose of thrills and chills with us, why not hit that subscribe button below? It's the best way to never miss out on the latest terrifying tales. So kick back, relax, and let's get started. The rickety cable car groaned under the weight of my backpack as it deposited me at the foot of Mount Fuji. The Airbnb, a solitary, weather-beaten tea house nestled amidst a grove of ancient pines, promised an authentic Japanese spiritual experience. The crooked wooden sign hanging precariously above the entrance displayed a single kanji character, Yurei, meaning ghost. A shiver danced down my spine despite the summer heat, but I chalked it up to a mixture of jet lag and the chilling name. Inside, the tea house was a maze of dimly lit tatami rooms, their silence broken only by the rhythmic dripping of unseen water. The air hung heavy with the smell of incense and something metallic, a faint tang that made me wrinkle my nose. Ignoring the unease, I unpacked my meager belongings, the flickering candlelight casting long, distorted shadows on the paper walls. Exhaustion from the long journey warred with the suffocating atmosphere. Sleep came in fits and starts, plagued by nightmares of wailing voices and the clattering of unseen chains. I woke with a gasp, sweat clinging to my skin. The pre-dawn light filtering through a paper screen revealed a small, ornately carved wooden chest tucked away in a darkened alcove. Curiosity gnawed at me, but a deeper sense of foreboding held me back. The metallic tang in the air intensified as I inched closer. The intricate carvings on the chest depicted scenes of a tormented landscape, twisted trees clawing at a blood-red sky, skeletal figures chained to jagged rocks. The urge to flee the room warred with a morbid fascination. Finally, succumbing to curiosity, I gingerly reached out and lifted the lid. A wave of icy air blasted out, carrying with it the stench of decay and the amplified metallic tang. Inside, nestled on a bed of crimson silk, lay a tarnished katana, its blade etched with the same tormented landscape from the chest. Panic clawed at my throat as I realized this wasn't a coincidence. The eerie name of the tea house, the metallic tang in the air, the disturbing carvings, a chilling narrative began to piece itself together. A sudden gust of wind howled through the tea house, extinguishing the flickering candle and plunging me into darkness. A low, guttural moan echoed from the chest, a sound that vibrated in my bones. Terror surged through me as a ghostly light emanated from the katana, its blade glowing in unnatural crimson. The room shimmered, and a figure materialized before me, a samurai warrior clad in tattered armor, his face obscured by a rusted helmet. In his skeletal hand, he clutched the glowing katana, its hungry edge reflecting the spectral light. He spoke in a harsh, guttural tongue, but the intent was clear, a challenge, a demand for an offering. Desperate, I backed away, my eyes darting around the room for an escape. Then, I spotted a worn calligraphy brush and a small inkwell tucked away in a corner. Desperate, I lunged for them, a sliver of hope flickering within me. My grandmother, a master of traditional Japanese calligraphy, had once told me stories passed down through generations, stories of warriors bound to their blades and the power of specific kanji etched onto them. With trembling hands, I dipped the brush in the ink and focused on the single memory that anchored me, my grandmother, her kind eyes crinkling with a smile as she taught me the character for peace. Taking a deep breath, I approached the spectral warrior, my voice barely a whisper. "Kyrie onegai shimasu," I said, bowing deeply, the words meaning please, find peace. As I spoke, I swiftly inscribed the kanji for peace onto the crimson blade. The spectral warrior recoiled, a scream of pure agony ripping through the room. The crimson glow on the blade flickered and died, replaced by a faint, ethereal light. The warrior's form wavered, his armor dissolving into dust as the kanji for peace pulsed with a gentle white light. Silence descended, broken only by the rasping of my own breath and the steady drip of water from the hidden leak. Exhausted and shaken, I collapsed onto the tatami mat, the calligraphy brush clutched tightly in my hand. Dawn broke, casting a pale light on the weathered tea house. As the search helicopter approached, its rotors disturbing the serenity of the ancient grove, I looked back at the tea house. The ornately carved chest remained open, the tarnished katana lying inert within. The kanji for peace was still faintly visible, a stark reminder of the night I faced a vengeful spirit and emerged, not with violence, but with a timeless symbol, a testament to the power of even the smallest act of peace. The metallic tang lingered in the air, a constant reminder of the warrior's sacrifice. He wasn't a monster, as my initial terror had painted him. He was a tormented soul, bound to a weapon of war, forever reliving his battlefield fury. My offering of peace had not erased him, but rather released him from his spectral purgatory. Days later, back in the bustling heart of Tokyo, the metallic tang still lingered, a phantom sensation. But with it came a newfound appreciation for the serenity I'd found in the calligraphy brushstrokes, a simple act that resonated across time and culture. The memory of the haunted tea house became a strange souvenir, a dark tale whispered against the backdrop of Mount Fuji's majestic beauty. One evening, as I practiced calligraphy in my tiny apartment, a single cherry blossom petal drifted through the open window. It landed gently on the paper, its delicate pink contrasting starkly with the black ink. Gazing at it, a sense of peace washed over me. Perhaps it was a final farewell from the samurai warrior, a token of gratitude for the peace I'd offered. The incident became a turning point. My writing career, previously stagnant, blossomed. My stories, infused with a newfound depth and a touch of the supernatural, resonated with readers. Success brought invitations to travel the world, to experience new cultures and share stories. Yet, every time I ventured into a new Airbnb, a sliver of unease lingered. One day, in a bustling market in Marrakesh, a glint of crimson caught my eye. A weathered katana hung on a stall, its blade etched with a landscape of twisted trees and a blood-red sky, the same disturbing scene from the tea house chest. Panic surged through me, but this time, it was laced with a strange sense of purpose. Bargaining fiercely, I bought the blade. It felt heavy in my hand, a chilling reminder of the past. Back in my apartment, I carefully cleaned and restored the katana, the metallic tang clinging to the air once more. This time, though, it wasn't a harbinger of fear, but a call to action. I returned to Mount Fuji, not as a tourist, but as a custodian of a story untold. I found the tea house easily, nestled amidst the ancient pines, looking a little less weathered, bathed in the golden light of the setting sun. Carefully, I placed the restored katana back in the chest, the crimson blade gleaming with a strange serenity in the fading light. As I stood there, a gentle breeze rustled the leaves, carrying with it a faint melody I recognized, the haunting tune from my nightmares. But this time, it wasn't filled with despair. It was a melancholic lullaby, a warrior's farewell finally finding peace. With a deep bow, I turned and walked away, leaving the tea house and its secrets behind. The metallic tang had finally vanished, replaced by the quiet hum of a story whispered, a promise kept, and a soul finally at peace. But as I boarded the train back to Tokyo, I knew this wouldn't be my last encounter with the unseen. The world was full of stories waiting to be unearthed, and I, with my brush and a newfound courage, was ready to listen. The crumbling manor on the windswept Yorkshire coast loomed like a skeletal hand reaching from the sea. The Airbnb listing, adorned with faded black and white photographs, boasted a secluded writer's retreat. The peeling paint, overgrown gardens, and a single boarded-up window overlooking the churning gray waves whispered a different story. A cold dread snaked down my spine as I wrestled my backpack up the crumbling flagstone steps, the only sound the mournful cry of gulls circling overhead. Inside, the manor was a labyrinth of dust-shrouded rooms, each one steeped in a silence so profound it felt suffocating. The air hung heavy with the smell of mildew and something metallic, a faint tang that sent shivers down my spine. Ignoring the prickling unease, I unpacked in a room dominated by a massive, ornately carved oak desk. A thick layer of dust obscured the intricate writing etched on its surface, remnants of stories long forgotten. Exhaustion from the long journey warred with the suffocating atmosphere. Sleep, when it came, was a fevered dream filled with whispers in a language that scraped at the edges of my memory and flickering images of a figure hunched over the oak desk, scribbling furiously. I woke with a start, drenched in sweat, the pre-dawn light filtering through a grimy window revealing a collection of leather-bound journals stacked on the desk. Curiosity, a morbid fascination, warred with a deep-seated fear. Hesitantly, I picked up the top journal, its cover cold and damp in my hands. The yellowed pages were filled with a sprawling, elegant script, the language the same one from my dreams. A chill snaked down my spine as I recognized a few words that spoke of ancient rituals, of summoning and binding. Panic clawed at my throat as I realized this wasn't a coincidence. The boarded-up window, the metallic tang in the air, the disturbing journals, a horrifying narrative began to piece itself together. The leather creaked ominously as I flipped through the pages, the strange symbols blurring before my eyes. Suddenly, a violent gust of wind slammed the window shut, plunging the room into darkness. A low, guttural moan echoed through the room, the sound vibrating in my bones. Terror surged through me as a ghostly light emanated from the journals, the arcane symbols glowing with an unnatural green luminescence. The room shimmered, and a figure materialized before me, a tall, gaunt man with sunken eyes and a long, tattered coat. In his skeletal hands, he clutched a worn leather-bound journal, identical to the one I held. He spoke in the same guttural language from the journals, but the intent was clear, a challenge, a demand for the return of something stolen. Desperate, I lunged for the open journal on the desk. A forgotten memory surfaced from the depths of my childhood, my grandmother, reading me stories from a similar book, stories of forgotten languages and ancient pacts. With trembling hands, I flipped through the pages, searching for a counterpoint, a way to break the binding. My eyes landed on a passage, a series of intricate symbols mirroring those glowing in the air. Taking a deep breath, I traced the symbols with my finger, a whisper of power resonating through the room. The spectral figure recoiled, shielding his eyes from the sudden burst of emerald light emanating from my touch. The room filled with the sound of tortured screams, a cacophony of voices trapped within the journals for centuries. The figure writhed in agony, his form flickering as the screams grew louder. With a final, ear-splitting shriek, the figure dissolved into a cloud of spectral dust, the green glow fading. Silence descended, broken only by the rasping of my own breath and the faint rhythmic drip of water from a hidden leak somewhere in the room. Exhausted and shaken, I collapsed onto the floor, the leather-bound journal clutched tightly in my hand. The journals on the desk remained, their arcane symbols now lifeless. Dawn broke, casting a pale light on the crumbling manor. As the rescue boat approached, bobbing precariously in the churning waves, I knew this wasn't just a close call. It was a chilling encounter with a legacy of forgotten knowledge, a night where the lines between past and present blurred, and I, a simple writer seeking solitude, became entangled in an ancient pact, forever bound to the secrets whispered within the decaying walls of the windswept manor on the Yorkshire coast. The metallic tang lingered in the air, a constant reminder of the price of unearthing forgotten stories, and the chilling echoes of those trapped within the leather-bound prisons, forever yearning for release. The deserted gas station on the dusty Arizona highway offered the only vacancy on my Airbnb app. The listing boasted a historic Route 66 experience, but the peeling paint and boarded-up windows whispered a different story. A cold dread snaked down my spine as I wrestled my backpack out of the rental car, the silence broken only by the mournful cry of a distant raven. Inside, the station was a monument to a bygone era. Cobwebs draped from the dusty pumps, and a faint metallic tang hung heavy in the air, a smell I couldn't quite place. Unease gnawed at me, but with nightfall approaching and nowhere else to go, I unpacked in the single, cramped room behind the old counter. Exhaustion from the long drive warred with the prickling fear. Sleep came in restless waves, haunted by dreams of flickering neon signs and disembodied voices whispering on the wind. I woke with a start, a cold sweat clinging to me. The pre-dawn light filtering through a crack in the boarded-up window revealed a dusty collection of old photographs behind the counter. Curiosity overcoming apprehension, I picked one up. It depicted a group of smiling tourists posing in front of the gas station, a vibrant beacon in the vast desert landscape. But something was wrong. Their smiles were frozen, their eyes wide with a chilling terror. A single figure stood apart from the group, its back to the camera, shrouded in a long, tattered coat. The metallic tang in the air intensified. Panic clawed at my throat as I realized it wasn't just my imagination. A faint red stain marred the chipped tile floor behind the counter, spreading in an indistinct pattern. Dried blood. Suddenly, a gust of wind howled through the station, extinguishing the dusty overhead light and plunging me into darkness. A low, guttural moan echoed through the room, a sound filled with an ancient malice. Terror surged through me as I fumbled for my phone, its weak flashlight beam cutting through the inky blackness. My gaze fell on the photo again. This time, the figure in the tattered coat had turned slightly, its head obscured by the shadows. A single, lifeless eye, glowing in unnatural red, stared back at me. The moan came again, closer this time, accompanied by the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching on the cracked asphalt outside. With trembling hands, I grabbed a heavy metal wrench from behind the counter, its cold touch a sliver of comfort in the suffocating darkness. The floorboards creaked under my weight as I backed away, the red eye from the photograph burning into my mind. The footsteps stopped in front of the boarded-up windows. A rasping voice, dry and inhuman, spoke in a language I didn't understand. But the intent was clear, a chilling promise of violence. Desperate, I lunged for the boarded-up window, adrenaline coursing through my veins. With a primal scream, I smashed the rotten wood with the wrench, the sound echoing through the silent desert. A wave of freezing desert air flooded the room, carrying with it the faint sound of a retreating howl. Dawn broke, casting a pale light on the desolate gas station. The boarded-up window gaped open, shards of wood scattered on the dusty floor. Exhausted and shaken, I collapsed onto the counter, the wrench clutched tightly in my hand. The photo lay beside me, the red eye now blank, staring sightlessly. The metallic tang lingered in the air, a constant reminder of the night I faced an unseen horror in the abandoned heart of the desert. As the tow truck arrived, hauling away my totaled rental car, I knew this wasn't just a close call. It was a brush with a darkness that lurked just beyond the veil of civilization, a darkness with a single, chilling eye, forever etched in my memory. The worn keyboard clicked rhythmically as I typed in the final details, charming studio in Parisian artist's quarter. Perfect for a solo stay. Excitement bubbled in my chest. This solo trip to Paris, to focus on my writing, was exactly what I needed. The pictures of the Airbnb were idyllic, a sun-drenched room with exposed brick walls bursting with colorful artwork, or wrought iron balcony overlooking a narrow Parisian street. The price was suspiciously low, but I brushed it aside, chalking it up to beginner's luck. The reality was a far cry from the pictures. The building loomed over the cobbled street, its facade stained and crumbling. A chipped inscription over the doorway identified it as La Maison Rouge, the Red House. An unsettling shiver danced down my spine. The studio was on the top floor. The rickety wooden stairs creaked ominously under my weight, and the air hung heavy with the smell of mildew and something metallic, a faint tang that made me wrinkle my nose. Ignoring the unease, I unpacked. The room was sparsely furnished, the only source of light a single bare bulb dangling from the peeling ceiling. Dust motes danced in the dim light, and a chill that had nothing to do with the Parisian spring seeped into my bones. Exhaustion from the long journey eventually won over apprehension, and I drifted off to sleep on the lumpy mattress. My dreams were a kaleidoscope of fragmented images, flashes of crimson, whispers in a language I didn't understand, and the chilling glint of a blade. I woke with a gasp, bathed in sweat. The pre-dawn light filtering through the grime-coated window revealed a large canvas propped up against the far wall. Depicted on it was a scene both grotesque and strangely captivating. A woman in a crimson dress stood in the center, her back to the viewer. Her long dark hair flowed down her back, obscuring her face. In her hand, she held a long, serrated knife, its tip dripping with a crimson that seemed to pulsate in the weak light. The metallic tang in the air grew stronger. Panic clawed at my throat as I realized it wasn't just my imagination. A dark stain marred the floorboards near the base of the canvas, spreading in an indistinct pattern. Fresh blood. Suddenly, a floorboard creaked from the hallway outside. My heart hammered in my chest. Grasping the chair beside the bed, I white-knuckled the wrought iron frame, my mind racing. The footsteps approached slowly, deliberately. They stopped right outside my door. Then, a voice, a woman's voice, spoke in heavily accented French. I didn't understand the words, but the tone sent chills down my spine. It was a sing-song nursery rhyme, spoken in a voice that oozed with a chilling sweetness. The doorknob rattled. Terror flooded my veins. Adrenaline surged through me, lending me a desperate burst of strength. I lunged for the balcony door, throwing it open. The cool Parisian air whipped at my face, a welcome shock. With a final, desperate glance at the blood-stained canvas and the crimson-clad figure materializing in the doorway, I scrambled onto the wrought iron railing. The woman screamed, a sound that curdled my blood. Below, the cobblestone street seemed miles away. Taking a deep breath, I launched myself over the railing. The rickety cable car groaned as it deposited my battered backpack on the windswept Scottish moor. The Airbnb, a crumbling stone croft nestled amidst ancient standing stones, promised an authentic Celtic experience. Authenticity dripped from the moss-covered roof and the single, boarded-up window, but a cold dread coiled in my gut as I surveyed the desolation. Inside, the croft was a labyrinth of damp, echoing chambers. The air hung heavy with the smell of peat smoke and something metallic, a tang that sent shivers down my spine. Ignoring the prickling unease, I unpacked, the silence broken only by the mournful cry of unseen curlews. Exhaustion from the long journey warred with the oppressive atmosphere. Sleep, when it came, was a tapestry of nightmares woven with flickering torches and guttural chants echoing across a desolate landscape. I woke with a start, a cold sweat clinging to my skin. The pre-dawn light filtering through a crack in the boarded window revealed a massive stone slab dominating the room, its surface carved with intricate spirals and symbols that pulsed with a faint, red glow. Panic clawed at my throat. This wasn't a coincidence. The boarded-up window, the metallic tang in the air, the pulsing cymbals, a horrifying narrative began to piece itself together. A sudden gust of wind howled through the croft, extinguishing the embers in the fireplace and plunging me into darkness. Then, a rhythmic chanting filled the room, a deep, guttural chorus that vibrated in my bones. Terror surged through me as a ghostly light emanated from the carved stone slab. Emerging from the glow were figures, warriors clad in ancient leathers, their eyes burning with a fiery red light. They spoke in a language I didn't understand, but their intent was clear, a sacrifice. They gestured towards the stone slab, the pulsing cymbals growing brighter with each passing moment. Desperate, I lunged for my backpack, my fingers brushing against a worn leather-bound book tucked inside, a forgotten travel guide on Celtic folklore. Frantically, I flipped through the pages, the flickering red light illuminating a single illustration, a circle of intricate symbols mirroring those on the stone slab. With a surge of adrenaline, I grabbed a piece of charcoal from the extinguished fireplace and began recreating the symbol on the dirt floor. Confusion flickered across the warriors' spectral faces as the symbol glowed with a soft, white light, a stark contrast to the red emanating from the slab. The chanting faltered, replaced by a low growl. The warriors lunged, but as they crossed the threshold of the white symbol, their forms flickered and wavered. They screamed, a sound of pure agony, as they were ripped apart, their red light dissolving into nothingness. Silence returned, broken only by the rasping of my own breath. The red glow from the stone slab vanished, replaced by the faint, white light emanating from my hastily drawn symbol. Exhausted and shaken, I collapsed onto the floor, the book clutched tightly in my hand. Dawn broke, casting a pale light on the desolate moor. As the search helicopter approached, its rotors churning the mist, I looked back at the croft. The single boarded-up window remained, but the carved symbols on the stone slab were now inert. The white symbol on the floor had faded, a ghostly reminder of the night I defied an ancient ritual with a forgotten symbol, a night I stared into the abyss of Celtic magic and emerged, somehow, alive. The rickety bus sputtered to a halt, kicking up a cloud of red dust in the desolate Australian outback. The Airbnb, a solitary, corrugated iron shack, shimmered in the relentless sun like a mirage. The listing promised a taste of true isolation. Isolation, yes, but a prickling unease settled in my gut as I surveyed the rusted exterior and the boarded-up windows. Inside, the shack was a stifling oven. The air crackled with dust motes dancing in a single shaft of sunlight that speared through a gap in the boarded windows. A single, ornately carved wooden didgeridoo dominated the sparse living space. The polished wood seemed to hum with a faint, unsettling energy, a stark contrast to the harsh reality of the sun-baked shack. Sweat slicked my skin as I unpacked, the silence broken only by the relentless drone of cicadas in the distance. Exhaustion eventually won over apprehension, and I collapsed onto the thin mattress on the creaking cot. Sleep, when it came, was a fevered dream filled with whispers in an ancient language and the haunting melody of a didgeridoo. I woke with a gasp, disoriented and drenched in sweat. The oppressive heat had intensified, and a metallic tang hung heavy in the air. A low, rhythmic thrumming pulsed from the didgeridoo in the corner. The thrumming grew louder, morphing into a deep, guttural drone. Panic clawed at my throat as I realized the didgeridoo was vibrating, its ornately carved symbols glowing with an eerie red light. Suddenly, the boarded-up windows exploded inwards, showering the room with splinters. A towering figure materialized from the dust cloud, its skin painted with ochre and adorned with feathers, its eyes burning with an ancient malice. In its skeletal hands, it clutched a weathered didgeridoo, its rhythmic thrumming in perfect sync with the one in the corner. The guttural drone intensified, resonating through my very bones. The figure spoke in a language I didn't understand, but the meaning was clear: a challenge, a summoning. Desperate, I lunged for the didgeridoo in the corner. As my fingers touched the cool wood, the red glow pulsed brighter. A forgotten melody, a sequence of notes from my childhood didgeridoo lessons, surfaced in my mind. Taking a deep breath, I raised the instrument to my lips and blew. A shaky, uncertain note emerged, swallowed by the guttural drone. But I persisted, the melody strengthening with each breath. Confused fury flickered across the figure's eyes. The red glow from its didgeridoo faltered. With renewed confidence, I poured my fear and defiance into the melody. The didgeridoo sang, a vibrant counterpoint to the figure's menacing drone. The shack vibrated with the clashing music, dust swirling in a miniature dust storm. Then, with a final ear-splitting shriek, the figure crumpled to dust. The red glow vanished, replaced by the harsh light of the outback sun filtering through the shattered windows. Silence descended, broken only by the rasping cicadas and the faint thrumming of the didgeridoo in my trembling hands. Exhausted but exhilarated, I sank onto the cot. The ornately carved symbols on the didgeridoo remained, a chilling reminder of the night I faced an ancient spirit and emerged victorious, thanks not to violence, but to the forgotten melody that resonated with a power far greater than fear. As the rescue helicopter approached, casting a long shadow across the red earth, I knew this wasn't just a close call. It was a chilling encounter with a hidden world, a world where a single, forgotten melody could hold the power to banish the darkness. The taxi driver cast a wary glance at the ramshackle Victorian mansion as he dropped me off. "Sure you'll be all right here, miss," he muttered, his voice laced with concern. The Airbnb listing boasted Gothic charm, but the peeling paint, boarded-up windows, and overgrown garden whispered a different story. A cold dread snaked down my spine as I wrestled my backpack up the crumbling steps. Inside, the mansion was a labyrinth of dust-shrouded rooms, each one darker and more oppressive than the last. The air hung heavy with the smell of mildew and something metallic, a faint tang that sent shivers down my spine. Ignoring the prickling unease, I unpacked, the silence broken only by the mournful creak of the floorboards underfoot. Exhaustion from the long journey warred with the suffocating atmosphere. Sleep came fitfully, plagued by nightmares of disembodied whispers and shadows flitting through the decaying hallways. I woke with a start, a cold sweat clinging to my skin. The pre-dawn light filtering through a grimy window revealed a massive grandfather clock in the corner, its ornately carved face staring sightlessly back at me. The hands were frozen at midnight. As I fumbled for my phone, the silence shattered. A rhythmic dripping sound echoed through the mansion, each drop resonating with a chilling finality. Panic clawed at my throat as I followed the sound to a hidden room at the back of the house. The room was a macabre tableau. A dusty surgeon's table stood in the center, bloodstains marring its once pristine surface. A collection of gleaming scalpels lay scattered across a nearby tray, their metallic glint reflecting the faint red glow emanating from a grandfather clock identical to the one downstairs. The dripping sound intensified, drawing my gaze to the ceiling. Hanging upside down above the table, suspended by rusty chains, was a silver pocket watch. Blood dripped steadily from its ornate casing, each drop landing with a sickening plop on the metal tray below. Terror surged through me. This wasn't a coincidence. The clock faces frozen at midnight, the metallic tang in the air, the blood-soaked room. A horrifying narrative began to piece itself together. A low, guttural voice echoed through the room, its source unseen. "Ah, a new subject for my collection. Time, you see, is a fickle thing. But here, within these walls, it can be manipulated." The red glow from the clock intensified, revealing a spectral figure shrouded in a tattered surgeon's coat. Its skeletal hand reached out, the scalpel glinting in its grasp. Desperate, I lunged for the silver pocket watch, its rhythmic ticking a frantic counterpoint to the pounding of my heart. As I snatched it from its chain, the red glow pulsed with renewed intensity. The spectral figure recoiled, shielding its eyes from the sudden burst of light emanating from the watch face. The room filled with the sound of screams, a cacophony of voices trapped within the watch, each one a victim of the time-manipulating surgeon. The figure writhed in agony, its form flickering as the screams grew louder. With a final, ear-splitting shriek, the spectral surgeon dissolved into a cloud of spectral dust, the screams fading into a mournful silence. The clock on the wall downstairs lurched to life, its hands spinning wildly before settling on the current time. Exhausted and shaken, I collapsed onto the floor, the blood-soaked room spinning before my eyes. The silver pocket watch remained in my trembling hand, its rhythmic ticking a constant reminder of the night I cheated time and the chilling echoes of those trapped within its metallic heart. Dawn broke, casting a pale light on the decaying mansion. As a police car pulled up outside, the rusty chains creaked ominously in the gentle breeze, a haunting lullaby for the souls forever lost in the surgeon's macabre game. The rickety cable ferry groaned as it deposited my battered rental car on the windswept island. The Airbnb, a restored lighthouse towering on the craggy cliffs, promised unparalleled solitude. Alone, yes, but a disquiet settled in my gut as I surveyed the peeling paint and the single boarded-up window near the top. Inside, the lighthouse was a Spartan monument to isolation. The only furniture was a cot bolted to the cold, damp floor and a massive brass telescope aimed out at the endless ocean. A faint metallic tang hung heavy in the air, a smell I couldn't quite place. Ignoring the growing unease, I settled in for the night, the rhythmic crash of waves against the rocks providing an unsettling lullaby. Sleep came in restless waves, haunted by dreams of flickering lights and frantic voices lost in the wind. I woke with a start, a cold sweat clinging to me. The lighthouse was shrouded in an eerie silence, the only sound the rhythmic creak of the wind vane above. Curiosity overcoming fear, I climbed a narrow, spiral staircase to the lantern room. The once powerful light source lay dormant, covered in a shroud of dust. As I brushed it away, a glint of silver caught my eye. Tucked behind the reflector, wedged tight, was a tarnished locket. Hesitantly, I pried it open. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay a single, sepia-toned photograph. It depicted a lighthouse keeper and his family, their faces etched with a timeless smile. But something was wrong. Their eyes, once filled with life, now glowed with a faint, unsettling red. A sudden gust of wind slammed the window shut, plunging the room into darkness. Panic clawed at my throat as I fumbled for my phone, its light revealing a horrifying sight. Scratched onto the brass railing of the lantern room, in a language I didn't recognize, were symbols that pulsed with a faint red light. They matched the glow in the photograph, the glow in the eyes of the lighthouse keeper and his family. A low, guttural moan echoed through the tower, a sound filled with an ancient hunger. The metallic tang in the air intensified, now unmistakable, the scent of blood. Then, with a bone-chilling creak, the boarded-up window shattered inwards. A spectral figure, its form a macabre amalgamation of the lighthouse keeper and his family, materialized from the storm outside. Its eyes, burning with the same eerie red glow, fixated on me. Another soul for the beacon, it rasped, its voice a chorus of whispers layered with the howling wind. Join us, and guide the lost ships to their doom. The locket in my hand grew hot, almost burning my skin. In a desperate gamble, I flung it open, the red glow intensifying within the chamber. The spectral figure recoiled, shielding its eyes from the light. The symbols on the railing grew brighter, resonating with the glow from the locket. Suddenly, the lighthouse horn blared to life, its mournful wail echoing across the stormy sea. A blinding white light erupted from the lantern room, not from the source itself, but from the locket I held. The spectral figure shrieked, a sound of pure agony, as it was ripped apart, its essence consumed by the light. The horn fell silent, the lighthouse plunging back into darkness. Exhausted and shaken, I collapsed onto the cold floor, the locket clutched tightly in my hand. It was cold again, the red glow vanished. Dawn broke, casting a pale light on the storm-ravaged island. As the rescue boat pulled away, I looked at the lighthouse, its once dark window now glimmering with a soft, white light. The locket remained a chilling reminder of the night I fought back against the horror that lurked within the beacon, a constant whisper of the spectral family and their monstrous guardian, forever trapped within the island's wrath. The humid Louisiana air hung heavy as I pulled into the overgrown driveway of the ramshackle plantation house. The Airbnb listing boasted a historic immersion experience, but the peeling paint and boarded-up windows spoke a different language. A shiver danced down my spine as I wrestled my backpack up the rickety porch steps, the silence broken only by the mournful croaking of unseen frogs. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the metallic tang of decay. Cobwebs draped from the high ceilings, and the only light emanated from a single flickering gas lamp casting long, distorted shadows. The sparsely furnished living room was dominated by a massive, ornately carved grandfather clock. Its hands were frozen at midnight, and an unsettling stillness hung around it, like a suffocating shroud. Exhaustion from the long drive warred with the prickling unease, but I forced myself to unpack. As I settled onto the dusty sofa, a rhythmic ticking echoed through the room, emanating from the frozen clock. It was a slow, deliberate tick-tock, each beat resonating with a chilling finality. Sleep came in fits and starts, plagued by nightmares of skeletal figures trapped within the clock face, their bony fingers desperately clawing at the glass. I woke with a gasp, sweat clinging to my skin. The ticking had ceased. Silence, thick and oppressive, had taken its place. A sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, plunging the room into darkness. Panic clawed at my throat as I fumbled for my phone, its weak flashlight beam cutting through the inky blackness. My gaze fell on the grandfather clock. The hands were moving. Slowly, agonizingly, they crept towards one. A cold dread gripped me as I realized what time they were approaching, midnight. As the final chime echoed through the room, the clock face shattered with a deafening crash. From the gaping hole, a spectral figure emerged, its form shrouded in swirling mist. Its hollow eyes burned with an unholy light, and its skeletal fingers clawed at the air, leaving trails of ectoplasm in their wake. A rasping voice, filled with an ancient malice, echoed through the room. Another soul to mark the witching hour. The clock has chosen, and your time has come. The metallic tang in the air intensified, morphing into a nauseating stench of decay. Terrified, I stumbled back, my back hitting the wall. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The spectral figure lunged, its cold touch sending a jolt of terror through me. But then, a blood-curdling scream pierced the air. It wasn't mine. It came from within the clock itself, a chorus of tormented voices rising from the depths of the shattered mechanism. The spectral figure recoiled, its ethereal form flickering in confusion. The trapped spirits, awakened by the shattering of the clock, were fighting back. They surged forward, engulfing the figure in a swirling maelstrom of spectral energy. The room pulsed with an unearthly light, and the air crackled with raw power. Then, with a final ear-splitting scream, the spectral figure was ripped apart, its essence consumed by the vengeful spirits. Silence returned, thick and heavy, broken only by the faint ticking of a newly materialized clock face within the wreckage of the old one. The hands pointed to 1 o'clock. Exhausted and shaken, I collapsed onto the sofa, the horrifying scene replaying in my mind. As dawn's first light filtered through the boarded-up windows, I knew I wouldn't stay. But the image of the spectral figure and the screams of the trapped spirits would forever be etched in my memory, a chilling reminder of the night I stared into the abyss of time and the restless spirits it held captive. The Airbnb listing promised a secluded getaway amidst Icelandic nature. The reality, bathed in the perpetual twilight of the Arctic summer, was far bleaker. A solitary hut, hunched over on the windswept plain like a brooding gargoyle, awaited me. As I wrestled my duffel bag out of the rental car, a sense of foreboding settled in my gut, thick and suffocating. Inside, the hut was a cramped space dominated by a massive stone fireplace. The air hung heavy with a damp chill and the faint, metallic tang of rust. Ignoring the prickling unease, I unpacked, the silence broken only by the howling wind outside. Exhaustion from the long flight eventually won over my apprehension. Curled up in a thin sleeping bag on the rough cot, I drifted off to sleep. My dreams were plagued by flashes of fleeting shadows and whispers in a language I didn't understand. I woke with a start, a bone-deep chill clawing at me. The fire in the hearth had died, plunging the hut into an oppressive darkness. A single, flickering candle on a nearby table cast grotesque shadows that danced across the stone walls. Then, I heard it. A rhythmic scraping sound, emanating from the depths of the fireplace. Heart pounding, I fumbled for the lighter, its faint click echoing in the silence. With a shaky hand, I ignited the candle, its meager flame revealing a horrifying sight. Half buried in the ashes, a tarnished silver locket lay nestled amongst the blackened embers. Curiosity overcoming fear, I reached in and retrieved it. The locket was cold to the touch, the metal marred by deep scratches. With trembling fingers, I snapped it open. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, lay a single, yellowed photograph. The image was grainy, but the figures in it were unmistakable, a group of jovial tourists, their faces beaming with excitement, standing in front of the very same hut. But something was wrong. Their smiles were frozen, their eyes wide with a chilling terror. And behind them, barely visible in the background, a faint, shadowy figure loomed, its form indistinct yet undeniably menacing. A sudden gust of wind howled down the chimney, extinguishing the candle and plunging me back into darkness. The scraping sound intensified, growing frantic and insistent. Panic surged through me, the image of the terrified tourists burning into my mind. There was something trapped within the fireplace, something ancient and malevolent, awakened by the light of the flame. I scrambled back, tripping over the cot, the sound of the locket clattering to the floor lost in the cacophony of scraping metal. Then, a cold hand clamped over my mouth, stifling my scream. A guttural whisper, raspy and filled with an unspeakable hunger, hissed into my ear. "Welcome, guest. Another soul to join the collection." Through the near impenetrable darkness, I felt a presence looming over me, its touch like ice against my skin. The metallic tang in the air grew stronger, a taste of blood and something indescribably foul. Tears streamed down my face as I realized the tourists from the photograph weren't gone. They were part of the collection, their life force trapped within the fireplace, now joined by another, me. The scraping sound ceased, replaced by a satisfied sigh from the unseen entity. The cold hand released its grip, and I collapsed onto the floor, whimpering, the faint glow of the dying embers illuminating a grotesque display of silver lockets lining the stone hearth, each one holding a silent scream, a testament to the horror that awaited any unfortunate soul who dared to disturb the secrets of the Icelandic night. The stench hit me first, a pungent cocktail of mildew and something metallic, clinging to the stagnant air like a shroud. The Airbnb listing had boasted a vintage desert retreat, but the peeling adobe walls and the single, flickering light bulb casting an ominous glow over the dusty interior painted a much grimmer picture. Desperation, however, trumped apprehension. Stranded after a car breakdown miles from the nearest town, I was left with no choice. My backpack thudded to the worn saltillo tile floor as I surveyed the single room. Dominating the space was a massive, ornately carved wooden chest, its brass hinges tarnished with age. An unsettling aura emanated from it, whispering secrets of a dark past. Pushing the unease aside, I unrolled my sleeping bag on the creaking floor and tried to settle in. Every creak of the building, every gust of wind whistling through the cracked window, sent my heart leaping into my throat. Sleep, when it finally came, was plagued by nightmares of clawing hands and guttural moans. I awoke with a jolt, the oppressive silence broken only by a rhythmic ticking sound emanating from the chest. Curiosity warred with caution, and with a trembling hand, I lifted the heavy lid. Inside, nestled in a bed of crimson velvet, lay a collection of tarnished silver pocket watches. Each one ticked with an unsettling urgency, their hands spinning wildly. As I reached for one, a chill snaked up my spine. Etched on the watch face was a single date, long past, circled in red. The ticking grew louder, a frantic symphony of forgotten time. Suddenly, a single, blood-curdling scream pierced the silence. It wasn't human. It was a primal shriek that echoed through the room, vibrating in the very marrow of my bones. The watches picked up the sound, their rhythm morphing into a maddening frenzy, their tiny hands blurring as they spun faster. Panic clawed at my throat. I stumbled back, tripping over the sleeping bag and crashing to the floor. A faint, red glow emanated from the chest, growing brighter with each passing moment. The floorboards beneath me seemed to writhe, the sound of unseen things clawing from below. Then, a single, disembodied voice whispered from the depths of the chest, a voice ancient and filled with a chilling malice. Another soul to join the chorus. Time never truly ends, dear guest. It simply transforms. The glow intensified, bathing the room in an unholy crimson light. From the cracks in the floorboards, skeletal hands began to claw their way out, clutching the tarnished pocket watches in their bony fingers. Their hollow eyes, filled with the red glow, met mine for a horrifying moment before they lunged. Driven by primal fear, I scrambled back, slamming the chest shut with a desperate clang. The ticking subsided, replaced by an eerie silence. But I knew it was temporary. They were trapped, for now, but the malevolent energy radiating from the chest promised a horrifying truth: they wouldn't stay trapped forever. Dawn broke, casting a pale, sickly light through the window. With a shaking hand, I fumbled for my phone, the signal bars mockingly blank. There was no escape. I was trapped in this macabre chamber, forever haunted by the chorus of forgotten time and the chilling promise of what awaited me when the chest finally gave way. The rusty mailbox creaked open like a scream in the twilight wind. The name scrawled on it barely matched the faded welcome banner across the porch of the ramshackle cabin. The Airbnb listing had promised a charming rustic escape, but as I surveyed the peeling paint and sagging eaves, a cold dread coiled in my gut. Ignoring the rising unease, I wrestled my backpack up the rickety porch steps. The only sound was the mournful cry of a distant crow echoing across the desolate landscape. No neighbors, no signs of life. Just a single, flickering light bulb casting an eerie glow on the cobweb-draped porch swing. The lock on the door was jammed, but with a final heave, it yielded with a sickening groan. Inside, the air hung thick with a stifling silence. dust motes danced in the single shaft of light filtering through a grime-coated window. The furnished living area was sparsely decorated, dominated by a towering bookcase crammed with leather-bound volumes. Each book seemed to reek of age and a faint metallic tang that sent a shiver down my spine. Exhaustion from the long drive warred with the prickling sense of unease. Determined to ignore it, I tossed my bag onto a threadbare couch and approached the bookcase. The worn titles held no appeal, but a strange compulsion drew me closer. As I brushed my fingers across a cracked spine, a hidden latch clicked open. A narrow compartment popped out, revealing a single, tarnished silver locket. Curiosity momentarily eclipsing my fear, I popped it open. A faded image stared back, a young woman with haunted eyes, her expression one of pure terror. Before I could decipher the inscription etched on the back, the floorboard beneath my feet creaked loudly. My head snapped up, searching wildly for the source of the sound. Silence. Then, a faint tapping, emanating from somewhere within the house. It was a rhythmic, almost musical sound, yet deeply unsettling. I followed it down a dimly lit hallway, the air growing colder with each step. The tapping led me to a locked door at the end of the passage. Turning the rusty knob, it swung open with a groan. Inside, a dusty attic room lay shrouded in darkness. Moonlight filtered through a single, boarded-up window, casting long, distorted shadows across the floor. In the center of the room, a small wooden table stood, a single flickering candle perched upon it. And on the table, nestled amidst a chaotic mess of old maps and handwritten journals, lay another silver locket, identical to the first. This one held a different image, a man, his face contorted in a silent scream. But as I leaned closer to examine it, the candle sputtered and died, plunging the room into complete darkness. Panic surged through me, the tapping sound suddenly growing frantic. Heart hammering, I fumbled for the doorknob, desperate to escape the oppressive darkness and the horrifying sound. But the door wouldn't budge. Clawing at the knob with trembling hands, I spun around, searching for another exit. But there was none. Then, a cold hand clamped over my mouth, stifling my scream. A rasping whisper, chillingly close, slithered into my ear. "Welcome, dear guest. We've been waiting for you." The metallic tang grew stronger, filling the room. It wasn't just in the air, it was everywhere, a smell of blood and something ancient and evil. The tapping reached a crescendo, a deafening drumbeat resonating within the walls. The sound wasn't coming from outside, it was coming from within, emanating from the very floorboards beneath my feet. As a faint red glow began to seep from the cracks in the wood, I knew with sickening certainty that I wasn't alone in the attic. Something lurked beneath the floorboards, something that had been waiting for a new guest, a new captive for its macabre collection of locked memories. The flickering welcome light of the Airbnb cast an eerie glow on the deserted street. It was the only sign of life in the entire town, a stark contrast to the cheerful sunflower print on the listing. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the rhythmic crunch of my sneakers on the gravel driveway. Entering the house, a wave of stale air hit me, heavy with the scent of dust and something metallic. The interior was sparsely furnished, dominated by a large, ornately framed mirror hanging directly opposite the entrance. A shiver danced down my spine. Mirrors and airbnbs, a red flag I'd conveniently ignored in my haste to find a budget-friendly getaway. The only bedroom was a cramped space at the back of the house. As I unpacked, a sense of unease settled over me. Every creak of the floorboards, every shift of the wind outside, sent my heart racing. Finally, exhaustion won over paranoia. I collapsed onto the thin mattress, pulling the scratchy blanket over me. Sleep came in fits and starts, plagued by unsettling dreams of faceless figures watching me. I woke with a jolt, disoriented in the pre-dawn darkness. Then, I saw it. A faint red glow emanating from behind the mirror. My breath hitched. It pulsed rhythmically, like a beating heart. Panic clawed at my throat. There was no way a light was behind the mirror. It was solid wood. Yet, the glow persisted, growing brighter. Unable to tear my gaze away, I saw movement reflected in the glass. A distorted, shadowy figure stood behind me, its form shifting and wavering. The blood drained from my face. There was no one in the room with me. This wasn't a reflection. Terror propelled me from the bed. I scrambled back, tripping over the blanket and crashing to the floor. The red glow intensified, bathing the room in an unnatural crimson light. Through the haze of fear, I noticed a tiny red button on the ornate frame of the mirror. Was it a control? With trembling hands, I reached out and pressed it. The glow vanished. The silence returned, heavier and more suffocating than before. The figure had disappeared. But a new horror awaited me. Scratched on the dusty surface of the mirror, in a language I didn't recognize, were symbols unlike anything I'd ever seen. They pulsed with a faint red light, a chilling reminder of the unseen entity that had watched me sleep. I fled the cabin, leaving my belongings behind. The town was still deserted as dawn broke, casting a pale, sickly light on the empty streets. I never looked back. The Airbnb has since been removed from the listing platform, but the image of the pulsating red glow and the indecipherable symbols remain etched in my memory, a constant reminder of the night I stared into the heart of something unseen, something terrifyingly real.